can your mom become champion? It may sound like a silly question, but we've seen the moms in older Pokemon games have all sorts of achievements. The Gen 4 mom is a top tier Pokemon coordinator, and the Gen 6 mom was a former Pokemon racer. So why can't one of the other moms try to become champion? To find out if this would be possible, I decided to do a run of Pokemon Sword as the mom, or should I say mum, but what Pokemon would she have? Well, the easiest way to decide is to take a look in and around the house and see what Pokemon show up there. For starters, her starter would be Munchlax, the little pet Pokemon we have chilling at home. Then there's also the two Badoo that show up to vibe in the garden later in the game, and last but not least, that one Butterfree that keeps flying in and out of our yard. That's 4 Pokemon for this Pokemon. I'll also follow my typical character run rules for this playthrough, except I will allow Mom to have held items and also use the Dynamax band to Dynamax her Pokemon, because in this world, Gloria got her Dynamax band from the professor, but then decided she didn't want to be a trainer and just left it lying around at home, so we might as well use it, right? Before kicking off this run, I had to breed and transfer over a Munchlax from another save, since sadly, I cannot take this little guy out of the living room. And that's where I ran into a Pokemon sillyism. You see, in order to get a baby Munchlax, you have to give your Snorlax an incense, otherwise the egg will hatch into one of these guys. But what incense do you need to get a Munchlax? Is it the Lax incense or the full incense? If you chose the Lax incense like I did, you'd be wrong. The Lax incense can be used to get yourself a why not, because why not confuse our players with the naming convention? The other sillyism I encountered is that, well, it's easier to just show you.
Mom, let's celebrate your recent victory!
Haha, have a look at you, Mum!
Hey, Mum!
Guess I'm everyone's mum now. Speaking of which, I had to pick a number for my uniform, and since this video should be coming out on Mother's Day in America, I'll go with 511. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms watching. Before setting out for Motostoke, I first needed to spend some time exploring the wild area to catch the second Pokemon for Mom's team, a Metapod, which only knows Harden, so it's gonna be useless right now. And I also checked out some of the TR shops, one of which happened to sell Metronome, the perfect move for our Munchlax. Then we got to have our first major battle with Hop on the way out of town. Our first Metronome got Munchlax all worked up, then we used Confusion to deal some minor damage, got to set up an Acid Armor, and then blocked Hop from switching out his Wooloo, who was just buying at us this entire time. Eventually, we got to use some good moves like Low Kick and Brick Break, but Hop used his one-time heal and we ran out of PP for Metronome, so it was time to switch back to plain old Tackle. Except Hop also finally decided to attack us and trigger my trap card, or should I say held item, the Oranberry, which heals my HP by 10. But also, it allows my Munchlax to use its secret endgame move, Belch.
Now that's a lot of damage.
And then we could just use the move Recycle to get our berry back, eat it to restore even more health, and let out another Hardy Belch to take down Hop's Score Bunny as well. However, this strategy wasn't going to work on his final Pokemon, Rookity, since it has the Unnerve ability which makes us unable to eat our berries. Thankfully, we did have one more Belch ready to go, and then could just finish off the bird the next turn. This battle also got our Metapod to evolve, so we could finally have a backup Pokemon in case the Belch strategy fails, like in the fight against Beed. Then we could just send out our Butterfly and have it use Gust to blow away this little hat, and let us pass through the mines. But before heading into Turffield, we had some more Pokemon to catch, or should I say to catch, because we were looking for a pair of Badoo. Now these Pokemon are surprisingly rare on Route 4, only showing up 5% of the time through random encounters. And while I could have just gone back to the wild area for a much more common spawn rate, I instead decided to interact with a feature I've never touched during my 30+ runs of this game, camping. Considering the in-game mom gave us our camping gear, it wouldn't be too surprising to see her use this feature throughout her run. But what was surprising is all the mechanics involved that I just did not know about. In fact, I learned so much stuff that I think I'll make a whole separate video about camping in Pokemon Sword and Shield, but for now, I'll just let you know that you're able to change the random encounter rates of Pokemon on each route by making curry. However, this new set of encounter rates only works for the first random encounter you get after leaving the camp. I learned this the hard way, as I was attacked by a horde of 8% spawn rate Meowth after catching our first Badoo, and realized it had gone back to the normal spawn rate. But Mom is not a cat lady, she is a chef, so she whipped up another curry, found a second Badoo, and then made her way to Turffield to take on the first gym. which was more of a garden off than a battle, as we had our Badoo face his Gossiflor. We started out by setting up Growth, then attacking with Swift, which was barely doing any damage, but so was Milo. He did manage to knock out our Badoo first, but we have another. Then it was time for him to Dynamax and for us to stall. There's not much Badoo could do here. I decided to go on the offensive with Munchlax, Dynamaxing it and using Max Ooze, which should be super effective here. Should. Thankfully, Milo ran out of Dynamax turns and our move boosted our special attack, so we were able to deal some decent damage, although that little Con Ball managed to bulk its way through all 3 of our Dynamax turns. But that's okay since we ate our berry and could now let out a Belch, which is all it took to finish off the fight and get ourselves the first gym badge. Now typically, I'd start to worry about Nessa right around this point, however, Mom had other problems to deal with, like getting interviewed by Gillian, who I keep calling Rachel for some reason, having a word with some hooligans who were trying to steal a bike, and most importantly, trying to decide if we should adopt this little Toxel from the daycare. But you know what, gamers? That's not my kid. Speaking of which, I should probably give nicknames to all of my Pokemon, because that is what moms do. She literally named you, so I gotta name them. First up, we have our Munchlax. His name is now Munchie, and he's evolved into a Snorlax. Then we got Boomerang, the Butterfree. He has a degree in electrical engineering, which comes with a magnet, an electric type move, and $80,000 of student loan debt. So he had to move back home to make ends meet. Typical Boomerang kid behavior. And last but not least, we have our 2 Badoo, 1 guy and 1 girl, which I named Rosario and Rosa respectively. Unfortunately, these little guys were still babies and very weak stat-wise, so I decided to use my 1 TR for Seed Bomb on Munchie, because if he doesn't have a good move, Mom would simply lose to Nessa just like everyone else in this region. On our second attempt of the Nessa fight, the better half of the Badoo crew managed to weaken her Goldeen, then Boomerang came in to put his degree to work, finishing off the first Fishy and dealing major damage to the second one, only to get knocked out by an Aqua Jet. It's okay though, since Rosario could easily finish it off, and then lived a grand total of 1 turns against the giant Dreadnought. We used Max Guard to stall a second turn, and then went on the offensive with Max Overgrowth, which nearly one-shotted the turtle. Nearly. But now that its Dynamax was over, we had nothing to worry about. A win against Nessa? That's great news for Mom. Or so I thought, until I realized I'm about to walk into a Fire-type gym with a team that is 75% weak to Fire-type moves. We were going to need a really solid plan to win here, and also decide if Mom would adopt any of these cute little Pokemon from the gym test, but no, not my kids. So instead of going to battle Cabo right away, I made my way back to the wild area to take on some Dynamax Dents for experience candies, but more importantly, some better moves, like this high horsepower TR I got from a Drober. We also did a little bit of camping to get our sweet little Rosario to evolve. Out of our 2 Badoo, he clearly had worse offensive stats, which made me want to put him in the lead of the party. Since he can't do as much direct damage, I thought Rosario could do a better job setting up entry hazards like Toxic Spikes. But he can't do that if he's dead, so I also taught him Attract to try and rizz up the enemy instead. Rosario? Haha, more like Rizario, am I right, ladies? Guess not, but that's okay, he can't do much damage anyways. So we followed up with Boomerang, who used Electro Web to slow down the Ninetales, then Air Slash to finish it off. Up next was Arcanine, who simply one-shot our Electrician, and since Rosa would also just instantly die here, I decided to follow up with Munchie, Dynamax, and attack with Max Quake, which managed to one-shot the doggy. Now we just had to deal with Kabu's Dynamax, who could barely deal any damage to us, but we weren't hitting that hard either, so we had to rely on our bulk and the damage from poison to take down his flaming hot bug. And would you look at that, Rosa also got to evolve at the end of this fight. Having collected the first 3 gym badges, Mom could now take a bit of a breather since the next gym is super far away, so she enjoyed some cycling through the wild area, checking out a museum in Hammerlock, and taking on some trainers on Route 6. Oddly enough, one of the required fights is against this lady who spams metronome at you, and it made me realize that even though the move is super cool and amazing when it comes in clutch, like getting Munchie to use Rock Wrecker against Hop's Raboot, it doesn't convert to being a useful move in the late game, since you typically only have enough HP to attack 1 or 2 times at best. Definitely not enough time to pull off cool moves, especially if you're as unlucky as me. Instead, we'll have to rely on more consistently powerful moves like Venoshock, which doubles in power when the foe is poisoned. We had also picked up the TR for Dazzling Gleam, which should be very useful in the upcoming fighting type gym. And last but not least, we gave Boomerang a hard hat because all engineers wear hard hats, right? Then it was time to take on B, whose lead Pokemon tries to take revenge on us for setting up those toxic spikes, then knocks out Rosario with a quick attack, but that's okay since our job here is done. Boomerang is out next using Air Slash to deal major damage and finish off B's lead Pokemon with a Side Beam the next turn. She follows up with a Pangoro, who knocks us out with a critical Night Slash but does take some damage from that rocky helmet. Our next best choice is Rosa, who finally gets to shine with her powerful Dazzling Gleam, finishing off Pangoro and two-shotting the Surf Edge, who was too busy dancing around to attack. That left B with just her Dynamax Machamp, who went for a Max Darkness, but we used Protect the Stall at a turn. Then we hit it with a Dazzling Gleam for some chip damage and got taken out with a Max Strike. Now it was time for Munchie to shine, but since Munchie is weak to fighting type moves, I decided to play it safe and used Max Guard to stall through B's last turn of Dynamax just in case. Then we could attack with a Max Mindstorm and finish off the fight with ease. Having claimed another gym badge, Mom took a nice throw through the Glimmo Tango into Ballonly, where she encountered a very strange trainer. This breeder claimed to have a way of making unevolved Pokemon stronger, but we had to beat her in battle to find out how. So we sent out our engineer and spammed Bug Buzz, which two-shot her supposedly bulky Dottler and got us the answer, Eviolite, the held item that boosts defensive stats of Pokemon who are not fully evolved. The perfect item for a lead Rosario. That way he's even more useful. In the event that his charms can't risk the foe out of attacking, Rosario won't take much damage when hit, meaning we can easily set up our toxic spikes and then go on the offensive against Oppo's Weezing. But then, I used the wrong move, button mashed through the quiz, which negated our Eviolite buff, and then got attacked 1 times too many by her lead, so it looks like Boomerang has to come clean up another mess. Oppo followed up with Togekiss, which knew Ancient Power, instantly knocking out our Boomer, so we had to rely on Rosa for some real damage. Except Togekiss also knows Air Slash, making Rosa as reliable as our dad in this game. Thankfully, good old Munchie can card carry here with its Max Steel Spike attack, finally knocking out the Togekiss with 2 attacks. Then Oppo followed up with an intimidating Mao, which got one-shot by our Max Quake, is what I'd like to say. However, she got to set up on Iron Wall first, meaning we failed the one-shot, and we were out of Dynamax turns. Now thankfully, both Steel Spike and Quake boosted her defenses, so we could tank through Mao-Wao's other attacks and knock it out with a high horsepower the next turn, but we still had to deal with the giant cake. Now the good news is that Snorlax always has room for dessert. The bad news is that some moves in this game outright don't work against Dynamax Pokemon, especially moves that look at Pokemon weights, so our super effective Heavy Slam attack would be useless for the next 2 turns. I really wish the game would tell me this before I tried using it and wasting a whole turn. Instead, I thought I'd give Metronome another chance and triggered a Teeter Dance, which confused the giant cake, making it punch itself during the last turn of Dynamax. And now that it was just a little dollop of whipped cream, we could finally attack with Heavy Slam, dealing massive damage and letting the poison take care of the rest. Now that we had every gym badge from the west side of Galar, it was time to head east towards Circhester, and that meant having to make our way through the rugged Route 8, where we found a very useful item, the Shiny Stone, which we used right away to evolve our Rosa into a Roserade, making this Pokemon even more useful against the upcoming Rock-type gym, but not too useful against Gordy. You see, this mama's boy decided to set up Shell Smash while we were laying out our toxic spikes, and that gave his lead Pokemon the speed and power boost to take down Rosario, then one-shot both Rosa and Boomer, which meant Munchie had to once again carry, so we Dynamaxed and went for the Max Steel Spike, which would boost her physical defenses and should be super useful against Gordy's all-physical team. Unfortunately, we ran out of Dynamax turns when facing off his Shuckle and couldn't quite one-shot the Stonejourner, but Gordy's Pokemon weren't doing too much damage. However, I didn't want to risk the battle and decided to use my one-time heal on the first turn of Dynamax. This turned out to be a great call, since Gordy's Gigalith got to land a critical hit on us on turn 2, which nearly finished off poor little Munchie, but we lived with enough HP to attack with a high horsepower and one-shot his Dynamaxed ace. Looks like Melanie's boy has a lot more learning to do. Meanwhile, we've got to go to an underground concert in Spikemouth that sold tickets for pretty cheap. Unfortunately, the lead vocalist was not able to sing, but instead agreed to battle us for his gym badge. We did our usual setup of toxic spikes while Pierce tried to pay us back for the ticket, which surprisingly did a lot of damage. But that's okay since we can follow up with Rosa and one-shot his lead. Then we took a turn to compose ourselves against the weird squid and attacked it with a Dazzling Gleam, dealing decent damage but getting cut cut off from the battle by this psycho. Out next was Boomerang, who was a lot more resilient and could finish off the Calamari incantation with a Bug Buzz. Pierce did not appreciate our remix, but at least our hard hat got to do some damage. And then it was once again time for Munchie to shine, using its newly learned Hammer Arm move to deal massive damage to his Obstagoon. Since we knew that Poison would take down his ace the very next turn, I thought it would be a good time to give Metronome another chance, and it turned into a Darkest Lariat, which was a pretty fitting move for this caged up gym. Now we just had to take care of the Skuntank, who was immune to our toxic spikes and decided to poison us, while I used my one-time heal just in case. Then Munchie went on the offensive with high horsepower, which managed to two-shot the skunk and get us another gym badge, as well as a refund on that ticket. Can't rip off this, Mom. What you can do, however, is ask her for a double battle, so that she can show off both of her rose babies at the same time. They both get attacked by the Flygon's Breaking Swipe, but it hits a poison point and gets, poisoned, and then gets double Mega Drained by the two roses. Since we know the poison will take care of this dragon, the two roses focus on Gigalith next, although it lives with 1 HP and throws rocks to blast away Rosario. Boomerang is out next, only to lose half its health to the Stealth Rocks Raihan set up earlier, and it also gets outsped by the Flygon, who proceeded to punch the Butterfree away. And here I was, hoping it would take care of the Gigalith, so I had Rosa use Protect to waste a turn. Rookie mistake, as this rock gets to live. But that's okay since it gives us the opening to stack 1 Max Knuckle and boost Munchie's attack, while Rosa one-shots the Sandaconda, making this match a 2v1 against Raihan's Duraludon. We exchange some Max Knuckle blows, but that leaves his ace open to Rosa's Dazzling Gleam, which finished off the Towering Dragon like some sort of fever dream. And with that, Mum got herself all 8 gym badges and a one-way ticket to Winden, where we have to face off against the 3 main rivals. First up, we have sweet little Marnie, whose team nearly got wiped by Rosario and Rosa. Then we had Hop, who wiped our team with his Corviknight, making Mom Dynamax her Munchie just to finish off the bird. But we got that triple attack boost by the end of the face-off, which made it easy to one-shot Hop Snorlax and Giant Cinderace. Beat was a little more troublesome with his lead Mawile, and just when I thought Rosa could sweep, his fast horse broke our broom, so we had to have Munchie take it down with a Max Quake, which made us an extra special wall that could poke through Beat's Dynamax attacks and body slam his Towering Fairy. And the reason why Speed ran through the 3 rivals is because we also have to take on 3 gym leaders in quick succession. Nessa's main problematic Pokemon was Pelipper, who kept spamming Roost, but we managed to slow it down enough with Boomer's Electro Webs, and from there we could let Rosa sweep her team with Giga Drains. B was a little scary with her bouncing Howlucha, who was going crazy style on us, but managed to finish it off thanks to Boomer's Electric Webs and Rosa's powerful attacks. Then we'd use Protect for 1 turn to let the poison build up and Dazzling Gleam to deal damage to her team. If the attack didn't knock them out, the poison would. Unfortunately, we got a little too greedy against the Machamp, barely doing any damage with her Dazzling Gleam and then getting burned to a crisp thanks to its Max Fire Punch. But that's okay because Munchie could stall out a turn, strike back with a powerful attack, and then guard again on turn 3 to let the poison do its thing. Raihan was a lot more troublesome this time around since his lead Pokemon could one-shot Rosario, and instead of setting up our spikes, I decided to use Toxic to directly poison his turtle. This way Rosa could deal massive damage with her Venoshock and watch as it goes down to the poison while we slowly drift off to sleep. That worked out fine for us since his Sturtonator keeps spamming Shell Trap, a move that won't work unless we use a physical attack, but all of our attacks are special, so we get to wake up from our nap and beat up his turtle that's more of a trap. Out next is Flygon, who tries to set up a Sandstorm on turn 1, giving us the opening to deplete its health with a Dazzling Gleam and finish it off the next turn. Sadly, our HP was running kinda low, and instead of setting up Rain, Raihan goes for the kill with his Goodra. Oh, now he does the Rain Dance. Boomerang tries to attack with the Draining Kiss, but it barely does any damage, and we get paralyzed, meaning it's over for this electrical engineer, beaten by his own craft. That means Munchie has to finish the fight, and we gotta start setting up those Max Knuckles because it's time for our rematch, but just like last time, our Munchie will win the Punch-Out against Raihan's Giant Duraludon. The next part of the story gets a bit weird, because instead of getting to fight Leon for the title of champion, we get interrupted by the Darkest Day and fly back to Potswick with Hop. And based on the interaction we see there, it would appear that our mom was still at home watching the telly when that final would have happened. Which is weird because when we do the fight with Leon later on, we can clearly see her at Winden Stadium, which makes me wonder if the original fight was scheduled on like a Thursday or something and she just couldn't make it in person because of work. Either way, with a little bit of assistance from Sonia, we grabbed the items needed from the slumbering world and made our way back to Hammerlock for the third time. Not to stop the darkest day, but to slap Rose silly for causing all this trouble. Unfortunately, his team has a lot of steel-type Pokemon, which would be big trouble for our mostly grass-type team, so Mom has to mix up her strategy a bit, doing something unusual for Galar and setting up a nice sunny day. Then she can go on the offensive using a fire-type weather ball to melt through Rose's steel-type Pokemon. This was the closest we were going to get to a Rosario sweep, but that really grinded Rose's gears, so he had to put an end to it. Unfortunately for him, we have a backup Rose on our team, as well as an electrical engineer to add some bureaucratic slowdown to his Dynamax turns. And then we could use our giant Munchie to slap this man silly. After that, we had our Snorlax stomp on the Toxic Dragon, then got assistance from the neighbor's dogs to prevent things from going out of hand. There, it's gonna be okay now. Wait, no, not my kid. And now that the darkest day was over and the Champion Cup final was scheduled on a weekend, we could finally take on Leon as Mom. Not his mom, she has another Pokemon, but our mom, your mom, me, I'm your mom now. Leon leads with his Aegislash and Mom leads with Rosario, who instantly goes to set up his Toxic Spikes. Then he tanks through a Shadow Ball like a champ, sets up a Sunny Day to bring the heat, and burns away Leon's sword with a Fire-type Weather Ball. Unfortunately, this strategy backfires, since Leon's Dragapult knows Flamethrower, and it's even stronger in the sun. So we have to use Protect to stall out an extra turn, then take a hit to the face and blast away his Poison Dragon with a Dazzling Gleam. But of course, there's another dragon to go, so we protect once again to let the poison damage grow and get finished off by an Outrage. This move also gets our poor electrical engineer ghosted from another interview, leaving Munchie all alone against over half of Leon's team. But things are not as gloomy as they seem, so we Dynamax and start to stack Max Knuckle, which finishes off his second dragon and two-shots the Rhyperior, meaning we've got our triple attack boost and no more Dynamax. That gives us enough of a power boost though to take care of his Rillaboom in a single turn, making the fight an even one-on-one. Now I know Snorlax are pretty specially bulky Pokemon, but I decided to use my one-time heal just in case Leon lands a crit on his first turn of Dynamax, but instead he does some Route 1 damage. Unfortunately, his Airstream attacks hit much harder, but not hard enough to finish us off on turn 3, giving Munchie the opening to land another Body Slam and finish off the fight with just a few HP to spare. Now thankfully, the battle ends before that Sandstorm could proc more damage, which means that to my surprise, our mom could, in fact, become champion in the Galar region. I guess moms really are that amazing, huh? So remember to wish your mom a happy Mother's Day today, or whatever that day is in your part of the world. If you would like to see me do more of these silly runs in the future, do leave a comment down below with which character I should cover next. Some options I've got written down are Sonia, Magnolia, or maybe even a weird side character like Caralis. I look forward to seeing your ideas in the comments down below. Either way, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!